Disclaimer. I am a law student, and the legal information provided is not legal advice. For that, please hire an attorney. Alright, well, hey, so, Elton, this is the notice. Get ready to bring in Katy, or I'm going to drag her in a moment. Yeah, so the next subject that we're going to be talking about, actually, someone who I have already had on the stream, Katy Montgomerie, was actually kind enough to reach out to me and let me know about it. That was developing in the UK. Basically, there is just to summarize, I won't get too deep into it, I'll let her explain more about it. There is a case, a pretty significant case happening over in the UK, about whether or not trans youth are able to be legally prescribed hormones or hormone blockers, right? Obviously, very intense subject. It seems that trans youth are one of those subjects which is just being argued by everyone in mainstream media. But yeah, so she reached out to me. Obviously, I have my thoughts, but I'm going to let her explain it first. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring her into the call. Hello, Katy.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, doing just fine. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much for reaching out to me again. Hey, second time that you're on. When was the last? Was it like a week ago or 2 weeks ago that I had you on?
It was like 10 minutes ago.
Wait, 10 minutes ago? Wait, what?
Don't worry, I was just joking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, literally had you. I literally just had you on the prior segment. Yeah, totally. But yeah, so thank you so much for reaching out. So could you go ahead? And again, we're just assuming that there are people who are watching who aren't familiar with you. So could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, hi, I'm Katy Montgomerie. I'm a feminist and a trans woman who argues a lot on Twitter. Basically, just a knobhead. I mean, that's it, I guess.
All right. Hey, that's cool. We dropped Katy's socials into chat because I have the best admins in the world. Thank you, Elsa. Appreciate it. But yeah, anyway, so awesome. So could you explain to the audience a little bit about, so I basically gave like a very short introduction, but could you explain a little bit about like what you brought up to me and what you sent me?
Right, yeah. So this week in the UK has, again, been very bad for trans people. It's pretty crap overall at the moment, but particularly for healthcare. Mm-hmm. We've had two like kind of major things going on for trans healthcare, both bad in the UK this week. The first is I guess I'll say them both and then we can like go into them a bit more in detail. Oh, also, sorry, one thing. Is my camera on? Because I can't see it.
Oh, your camera is not on. No.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Let's see.
That's cool.
Here. I mean, like we can turn it on really quick. Like, hold on. I'll turn on my camera so you can see me. Boop. There you go. You should be able to see me. Hello there. Yeah. But you yeah, if you want to, you can turn on your camera and then it'll be on stream. Oh my God. Wonderful.
I've got bees today instead of crabs.
The bees.
Yeah. Right. So sorry.
Oh no, you're completely fine. So yeah,
yeah. So I'll just summarize them both, and then I guess we can go into them. But one is the like the largest private trans healthcare provider has been kind of blocked from giving like thousands of trans people healthcare with absolutely no notice or warning. And then the other thing is like an anti-trans sort of pressure, gender critical lobby group has sued or is doing legal pressure onto the NHS to try and stop them from treating under 18s, basically. So, and we've just had this big court case, and it's going to be announced the results soon. But so that's been both of those are potentially very grim.
Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll take those one at a time. Yeah, it's incredibly grim, to say the least, right? So with the first one, so you said that there was basically an order pretty broadly. If I'm looking at it right, it's the gender reassignment legal challenge over use of hormone blockers gets green light. Is that the correct source I'm looking at?
Wait, sorry, say that again?
Gender reassignment legal challenge over use of hormone blockers gets green light.
Oh yeah, so that's so basically there was a case which was so they heard it last week. It's a judicial review. So I'm not entirely sure how the law side of this works, but
Mm-hmm.
basically they have some like claimants who are trying to say that they were treated wrongly by the NHS and therefore something needs to change.
Yeah.
And there was two claimants. One of them is anonymous, but the other is a detransitioned woman. So she lived as a trans man for quite a long section of her life.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, she's saying that she was too young to consent to treatment, and so therefore the NHS should ban, kids from being treated, which is the standard gender critical
Yeah.
TERFs argument. Is we need to stop people from doing it. In fact, one of the main lobby groups was standing outside the court with a sign which people have been tweeting around saying ban treatment for under 25s. So they're really just trying to stop trans people existing. I mean, lots of these people have trans kids themselves, and they don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see the ones who have young trans kids will be saying, "Oh, under 18 shouldn't be able to do it," and then as soon as they get to 18, they leave the house and never talk to their parents again.
Yeah.
Obviously, and then they say, "Well, under 25 shouldn't be able to do it," and they just keep pushing it back. I'm sure lots of us have experienced that.
Yeah. I mean, like, or sorry, on.
No, I was going to move on to the.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I completely understand that, like, it's really, and I mean, like, people do this all the time, right? Like, people who have, like, otherwise bigoted views towards groups of people will try to do this all the time. It's like, oh, no, I don't hate trans people. I just think that we should be looking out for the well-being of, children or youth or people under the age of 18 or people under the age of 25. But the fact of the matter is, like, they will push it back as much as they're able to until the point where they're just like, listen, like, I don't think that we should let children transition to, oh, listen, I think that people under the age of 25 shouldn't be able to transition to, I don't think that anyone should transition, right? It's clearly a mental issue. It's clearly a mental defect. We shouldn't let anyone do that, right? And like, these are the same people who wouldn't care that, like, literally gender affirming care, like, saves lives and prevents suicide, and they would just be fine with trans people dying. Hot take. That's my personal take. Like, they don't care. They just want to prevent trans people from existing. But yeah.
Definitely.
So I mean, like,
or
sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that kind of links into the second bit. I won't diverge off, but the idea is to block like trans healthcare from being available to people, even if that then means people turn to the black market. It gets more dangerous, more people get more injuries. That's not important. It's not important whether it makes people's lives better or not. It's just about stopping it.
Right.
Anyway, so this case. So in the UK currently, they can treat under 18s with gender dysphoria if they've. So there's one clinic. Well, there's one like central place which does it, which is part of the NHS, and they prescribe something about 100 people a year, less than 100 under 18s a year. There's a long waiting list. The waiting list is like 3 years. So for lots of these kids, even if they come out at like 15, then they often wait 3 years, and then they hit the threshold for 18, and then they have to leave that queue and start the back of the adult.
Are you
queue,
serious?
which then takes 3 or 4 years. I think sometimes I'm not entirely sure exactly how the system works, but I do know someone who that happened to. So, which is just barbaric.
It's awful. I mean, you're literally telling a trans person, you have to wait to get on something like hormone blockers or HRT through primarily what are like the most formative years for a person's physiology, right? Like, you're telling a trans person who's literally going through like the kind of puberty that they explicitly want to avoid. Oh yeah, no, you just gotta suffer through it. You just gotta suffer through this. And if you think that's too stressful and you might take your own life, well, fuck you. We don't care. Like it is subjecting trans people to a fate which is unavoidable for them, experiencing this, like experiencing that puberty, because otherwise, if they're not able to get on puberty blockers, like the only ways that they have out of that are to be able to like either resolve that by illegal means, or I guess like burying those feelings and like trying to repress them and all that. But otherwise, the ways out of those kind of situations are dark,
Yeah, there's it's ridiculous. It's kind of it's them well, I mean, there's the kind of gender critical belief that being trans isn't a real thing, like it's
Sure.
just a reaction to sexism. You're just a confused, oh, you're actually, you're just a gay man who likes dresses, as if any trans person thinks that what being
Yeah,
trans is. But
because yeah, exactly. Because I'm
you
definitely
just need to
always
talk
going
about it.
around like I don't know. I could go on forever about that, but yeah, obviously it's
Yeah,
ridiculous. You know.
yeah, and so it doesn't really matter. Like, I've argued with
Hmm.
lots of these people, and you can say to them, well, like the diagnosis success rate is over 99%. Less than 1% of people detransition, and half of those who do detransition do so because of societal pressure and transphobia. And there's all these studies saying that it makes trans people's well-being better. Like every single trans person you talk to will tell you that, because it's just obvious common knowledge in the trans community. But that doesn't really matter, because in their mind, being trans is just kind of made up. It's just kind of rubbish.
Hmm.
And so that all you're saying is, I'm choosing to just have surgery and take hormones, or I'm not. I mean, that's just a choice, and it's just ridiculous. So you just need to be talked out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just fundamentally the wrong way of looking at it.
Yeah, no, I
But
get it. I mean, like these are the
mm,
same. Like this is the same kind of mentality that a lot of like Christian fundamentalists have when responding to like
yeah,
anything LGBT, right? Like they like fundamentally they see it as a choice because they cannot conceive of a world where their God, being someone that like creates and is always infallible, like only creates people, um, who's like a morally good being. Like they can't conceive of a world where God, who loves everyone, could conceivably create like a trans or a gay person, right? Because it goes
mm,
against like their other interpretations of the doctrine, which would label those people by virtue of having those qualities be morally bad, right? And so like the logic that usually these kinds of people will employ, and obviously like there are going to be variations, but usually what you see broadly speaking is people saying that like, oh well, if you're trans or gay, well it's a choice, and you just need to choose to ignore that. You need to choose to not give in to that temptation, right? You need to choose because there's no way that you're actually a woman. There's no way that you're actually who you say that you are. It's just you being confused or tempted or whatever, right? Insert weird, like unsatisfactory explanation, right?
yeah, definitely. Well, I'll choose to stop being trans when you stop being a twat, mate. Like,
Hey, there you go. Amen to that.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So,
sorry.
yeah, but going back to like so this court case. So the two links that you
Mm,
sent me, were they about the same court case then, or are they different cases?
Um, I can't remember what links I sent you, but
Okay, you're
I
fine.
guess
Yeah,
I
the other
can
one was children not
talk more
able to
about.
give proper consent to puberty blockers, court told.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
which
that's the case.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So
you mentioned, or sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say. So I was saying about currently in the UK, they are allowed to um, prescribe kids, and they do. Like really, not many. It's like 100 a year. Um, but they use this principle we have in the UK, which is something called Gillick competence, which is like a legal precedent set in like 1985 about who can consent to treatment. So obviously, 18 plus can consent to their own medical treatment, but it's obviously difficult with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like kids can't necessarily fully understand the ramifications of all these treatments depending on their age. Like, a 2-year-old can't, and a 17-and-a-half-year-old probably can. So they've got this principle that basically, to stop doctors from being sort of sued for, um, you know, sort of violating consent or anything, they've sort of said this kind of this grey area sliding scale of consent, where if doctors feel that kids are mature enough to understand the full ramifications of the treatment, then they can be assessed to be Gillick competent, which then means that they can have treatment, and also importantly, they can have treatment without their parents knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So this originally came from contraceptive pill, the contraceptive pill, where like 16-year-olds or something want to start it, um, and there was a big court case um, trying to ban that, because they were, the anti common sense people were trying to claim that a doctor prescribing a 16-year-old girl the contraceptive pill is the same as him trying to solicit sex of her or something. Anyway, luckily we had it resolve in a way that under 18s can get contraception without their parents' consent,
Mm-hmm.
and that precedent then set the ground for under 18s being allowed to get abortions without their parents' consent, which is also important, and a whole host of other things, including transition. So the thing they're kind of attacking, like potentially they could try and attack it in a way where it's specifically only applied to trans people, but because of like how legal precedents and stuff work, I'm not an expert at all.
Sure.
It can, like affect other things, and you can end up setting a rule which works in other areas. And so like abortion and contraception are wrapped up in this. I've seen quite a few lawyers say, if this case goes really badly, then those rights for under 18s could be affected too, which is, grim. I mean, it's already horrific that they're trying to ban trans kids from getting the treatment that they need that's internationally recommended, but then to also threaten abortion and contraceptions, like extra grim. But as you mentioned earlier about like the sort of Christian extremists, the lawyer involved in this is someone who has taken on loads of anti-trans cases before, and also general anti-LGBT ones, and also pro-life cases, so anti-abortion stuff, and has worked with the ADF, which is the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is some like far-right, Puritan Christian group from the USA. So, this is all linked. This is all part of it. Like, without sounding like a conspiracy theorist, I'm pretty confident that most of the people involved on the anti side, abortion is either disposable to them or it's part of the goal. So
Interesting.
Yeah,
so like they're wrapped. So like that. So like I'm trying to understand the argument, right? So like essentially like there's a lot of wrapping up between like abortion rights and like trans issues, and so far as how they're trying to legally address these sort of issues.
Do you mean what we have today, or what the like gender critical people are trying to?
Like what the gender critical people are trying to do.
I think the gender critical movement as a whole, some of them are feminists and do care a lot about abortions. I think the majority aren't, and the majority just don't care. But there are also a lot of like conservatives and sort of religious conservatives who are anti-abortion. And the fact that this court case about trying to block trans people from getting treatment might also affect abortion and contraception is like, for some of them, they don't care at all. For some of them, that's a good thing. And for some, they don't want that to be a thing. So they, try and dismiss it and or stick their head in the sand, the kind of standard gender critical response thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, and that was sort of what I was asking, right? Because for a lot of, like, I suppose this is why, like, for beyond just, like, the fact that a lot of people who are gender critical, heavy quotations, usually are, like, peddling misinformation. Like, another reason that I am critical of the gender critical movement, I'm gender critical, is because, like, often they will try to make themselves out to be, like, a feminist movement. And I'm like, obviously, like if we want to be like TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminists, right? I feel like that's a bit generous, right? Because I mean, like we're talking about like people who, when push comes to shove, will end up like making like traditionally conservative arguments with people who they would like if they were trying to be like consistent feminists, would probably like overtly be critical of. But because they're able to achieve a goal of like discriminating against trans people, they're like, oh well, we don't really care who we're going to ally ourselves with if we're able to otherwise achieve that goal that we're seeking out. Even if we have to work with people who, if we were acting in good faith, we would otherwise ourselves be critical of, right? I feel like it just kind of like shows that they really aren't cared that much about like pursuing like feminist goals or beliefs, and that they actually just kind of like care about just shitting on trans people.
For sure. I mean, I think that so I often make a distinction between TERFs and gender critical people.
Okay.
I don't know if it really anyone else would agree or it really makes sense to you, but I think it helps me understand it, because I think that if you think of gender critical as like the superset of all of the anti-trans movements, it has like the religious conservatives, it has like the MRAs who just hate trans people and the incels and stuff, and it has like the TERFs as like a group.
Oh, interesting.
and because they'll all work together, like, and you get them in the same conversation, saying exactly the same things. You know, when you
Yeah.
see someone and they're saying the normal like turfy garbage, and then you click through and they're like, a Ben Shapiro fan, and their top tweet is "feminism is cancer" or something, and they've
Right.
just been saying we need to defend women's sex-based rights. So I think the gender critical movement is a big sort of broad alliance of all of these views, and TERFism, originally at least, is like a form of radical feminism. So like it, even when it's quite extreme, usually it has a largely consistent set of worldviews, and usually like true TERFs, as I might call them. There'll be like anti-sex work, and there'll be anti-surrogacy, and there'll be anti lots have lots of strong views on lots of things, and it'll all be this big group. And usually when you talk to random gender critical people, like 1 in 10 of them or something will have this huge set of feminist views and a big understanding, and they'll disagree on some core premises with you, but most of them just don't give a shit. They're not even arguably feminists. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a detour, but
No.
yeah,
I think that like that's an interesting perspective. I normally like kind of attributed like I'd made out like gender critical people and TERFs to be basically synonymous terms, but I mean like it's like I think it's interesting to basically like look at them as like different, whereas gender critical is more of like an all encompassing kind of term for what is a broader. I'm not sure if you want to call it a movement, like a broader category that like TERF is a subset of. Like it's interesting, right? To me, it doesn't make
I've
too
got a good
much.
Venn diagram. I'll tweet out my good Venn diagram.
Oh shit! Yeah. Listen, tweet it out, and
All
I will
kinds of
at me, and
places.
I'll retweet it, or I'll put it on stream. One
Okay.
of the two. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. So, all right, that was a long detour. So we talked about the court case that was being pushed, TERFs, all that good stuff. You mentioned, I think, or maybe I'm mistaken, another legislative action that was taken broadly against trans people. I might be wrong, but do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, the other healthcare thing that I summarized at
Yes.
the start. Yeah. So also, while we're talking about how like the NHS waiting lists for trans kids is like 3 years, and I was sort of mentioning how for adults it's also 3 to 4 years. In some places it's like 4 plus. Um, like in the UK, we do have public healthcare, and it's really good. And I'm not like I feel like whenever I talk about trans issues, I spend the whole time sort of like shitting on the NHS,
Yeah.
but it's amazing, and I would definitely choose the NHS over just private healthcare. And I think the NHS needs a lot more funding and reorganization
Right.
stuff. But for trans healthcare, it's not just underfunded, and it's not just badly organized. It's specifically designed to be prohibitively slow. There are extra steps to delay people. It's specifically bad. Like it's designed that way to slow people down, and lots of that's due to lobbying from anti-trans people and anti-trans people in the system who refuse and oppose all the reforms. And we've just got years and years and years of this all building up. But that has meant that the private healthcare, that's then obviously right for the private like sector to jump in and do better.
Right.
Apart from, as soon as anyone tries to do private trans healthcare, they get absolutely hounded by gender critical people and the media and just everyone. As soon as you start trying to help trans people, then they come for you personally. And that's happened with all of the few trans private clinics that have ever tried to start up. The media comes to them personally. People try and ruin their lives and stuff. So anyway, one of the private trans healthcare things, I think there's like 4 or 5, but they will have waiting lists too, and they're expensive, and lots of trans people don't have any money. But the biggest one has been under pressure for years, and I actually joined with them like 4 years ago, and that's how I started my HRT. And at the time, they were based in Wales,
All right.
and I found the service very good. So I mean, compared to the NHS, when I had my first NHS appointment, I'd been on HRT for nearly 2 years.
Oh wow! Holy crap! Yeah,
Maybe
holy
over
shit.
2 years. I waited 33 months in total for the NHS, and then my first appointment was just filling in a form, and I didn't see a doctor for another 6 months.
Holy crap!
Anyway,
Yeah.
so I went with this private one, which is called Gender GP, And shortly after then, um, due to all kinds of, people hounding them and stuff, uh, they found out that Gender GP hadn't applied for being a licensed clinic in the right way or something. I'm not quite sure what it was. Basically, they got suspended from practicing because they didn't have the correct license. And to be clear, they weren't suspended for malpractice. There was no patient complaints. There was no issue with the service, but it was found out that something about their registration wasn't correct. And basically the medical council stepped in and said, you can't do this until we've had a review and until we give you the proper license. And then obviously the doctor said, well, we have 1,200 patients and we can't just stop their healthcare. That's ridiculous. And the response was, well, they can go to the NHS. But obviously they can't, because the NHS is terrible for trans people.
Right.
Perhaps I'll go to that in a little bit, a second more. But anyway, basically, so they chose to carry on anyway, which then got them in even more trouble. So they actually moved to Spain,
wow.
which starts making them sound a little bit dodgy, to be honest, when you start moving countries. But it was in order to carry on providing the healthcare for their patients.
Right.
And then, so the latest thing this week is that several of the big media organizations all released a story about them and about their chemist, Clear Chemist, at the same time. So there was something on the BBC and there was something in the Times. I think another newspaper did them in the same week.
Oh, wow.
And so their chemist panicked, I guess, and has decided it doesn't want to work with them anymore. And they're the only chemist that there was licensed to work with them. So
Oh, Lord.
that meant that all of a sudden, all of those people, including myself, prescriptions can't be filled. So we can still get the prescriptions from Gender GP, and they're still running, and they're still legal in Europe, and everything's all fine in that case. But because of pressure from gender critical lobbying, we're just stuck without medication, and it's pretty horrifying, actually. I had quite a bad day. I'm quite lucky in that I have a lot of contacts, and I have enough money to resolve things, and I have the time and the headspace, and I'm already involved, and I've got quite a good GP and all this kind of stuff. But some people are just totally screwed from this. I found out. I thought originally I only had 8 days to sort it out, but I found another month's worth of medication in my drawer.
I mean, that's wonderful that you're able to. I mean, it sucks that you're in that situation, right? It's fundamentally literally by virtue of nothing within your control, you're just you're just SOL as far as your medication.
And some people, I was actually planning to, because I thought I only had 8 days left, and it usually takes a few days to do it. I was actually planning to renew my prescription on Friday, and then they got blocked on Wednesday. So I mean, some people would have had days left, or even might have already gone past the day. And then all of a sudden, what can you do? You can't go to the NHS because most people are already in the queue, and it's years long. All of the other private clinics were like, well, we can't take anyone on because thousands of people suddenly wanting healthcare. I mean, it's just not reasonable. So the only solution for lots of people is from support networks, getting medicine off random people, your friends and stuff, or just the black market. And that's, I don't see how this move by whoever made these decisions, and all the people pressuring for them, like the BBC and the Times and stuff, the only possible solution from this is that a load of thousands of trans people, including 18-year-olds and I think 16-year-olds they treat as well, are just going to turn to the black market. That was the only result of this,
Right.
Or people are going to get really ill from not having access to anything. So I mean, it's barbaric. I understand if they said this clinic is dodgy and we need to stop them taking on new patients, and then we need to issue an emergency mandate saying GPs have to continue the prescription or at least review it in order to, carry on people on the medicine they're on. But that's not the case. And because of how the NHS works, your GP is allowed to prescribe you a prescription that you're already on. So if I went to my GP, which I'm planning to do, I've been trying to get hold of them.
Yeah.
and I say I'm on this medicine, you need to give me it, or I'm going to buy it from the black market. They're allowed to prescribe that, but they're also allowed to not prescribe that if they don't want, and they can just say you have to go to the NHS waiting list.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they're allowed to say that means, I mean, I don't know what the numbers on that are, but I think most trans people that I've talked to in the UK have had a GP say, I'm not going to do that for you. In which case you can change GP, or that's it. I mean,
I'm sorry, I just want to go over that again. So, like, in your opinion, like, it's not all that uncommon to have a GP look at you and be like, no, I'm just not going to treat you, even if you otherwise like demonstrate that you meet all the criteria for, like, I guess gender dysphoria or whatever criteria they're looking for.
Yeah, I think most of them will just say, I'll refer you to the specialist. I think that would just be their answer.
That is really interesting. Also, just because we just covered a case over in the UK of when I was looking over Bros of Dawn video. Very interesting. Just something to I don't know, interesting context. Not necessarily related to this, but yeah, that's terrible. So, do you see any meaningful, like, I don't know, like, light at the end of the tunnel? Do you see any meaningful reforms being able to come to, like, address some of these issues, or do you think that trans people who want to go through those sort of channels are just kind of SOL?
So there's two kind of main things, I guess. One is that Gender GP are trying to work with all the other various chemists and talk with clear chemists, and I guess there's now some pressure from. I mean, the fact this came out of nowhere. If they said, "Oh, we're going to cancel this in a month," then we might have been able to build up some kind of reaction to it. But you know, there is a reaction to it. I think that it's possible that Gender GP will find another chemist who will do their prescriptions for over 18s or something. I think some people are going to be buggered, and I think some people might be okay. I mean, optimistically, they are working on it. The other thing in a much more long term is in some places, I think Manchester, maybe a couple of other cities, they're trialing out the idea of GPs, like, I don't know how best to phrase it, not required to, but trialing out GPs prescribing trans people the medicine that they actually need, basically doing their job.
Sure.
As like a sort of less archaic version of the current system we have. I don't quite know all the details for that, but I'm like, this is one of the big things that our government recently announced when they decided to throw the Gender Recognition Act in the bin, despite all of the recommendations. They announced instead that they were going to open 3 new different types of gender clinic, and so potentially in 5 or 10 years, trans people might have more options. So that's good, I guess.
But as of right now, there's really nothing. There's really no benefit, like, for people who are dealing with issues like right now.
For people right now, I would personally say, talk to your GP straight away and just say to them, like, you can get if you're at Gender GP, you can get them to send your list of medications and like the prescriptions. You can actually get them to send your prescriptions. You can go to your local pharmacy and ask if they'll redeem them, or whatever the word is. They might not. You can then go to your GP and say, I've been using a private doctor and I would like to move these over to the NHS. Probably best not say I was working with a private doctor who's working from Spain and whose thing's just been cancelled, but to say, and I want to move these over to the NHS. And then maybe if they say no, just say, well, if you say no, then I'm going to buy them from the black market because I'm a trans person and there's nothing I can do about this. And maybe they'll buckle. And also sort of hang tight for Gender GP to potentially get a new thing. I don't know. It's really grim. It's something I've been panicking about nonstop since.
I mean, it sounds like it's entirely reasonable to panic a little bit. I mean, like, it's a grim situation from the sounds of it.
Yeah, I think I would recommend following not Kirsty on Twitter, or at least on Medium, because she's been keeping track of the current, like, cutting edge situation. She's got a Medium post on it which has all the details. I'm not going to recommend anyone goes to the black market, but I know that that's a very common route for trans people, and it would be ridiculous to pretend Like, I mean, for trans people who are even a few years older than me, or came out a few years before me, like, of lots of them, there was no other option.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. And I guess my last thing is, if any like gender critical people are watching, like, fuck off. Like, there's a lot of academic. Like, I talk to gender critical people all the time, and I have some who I'd probably call my friends. Um,
Oh wow.
and it's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But
I believe
like,
it.
if you want to debate about whether trans women are technically women or not, or you want to discuss like biology and stuff, like, oh, I'll have those conversations, and I can usually do them without emotionally investing in them, and I
Mm-hmm.
find them kind of interesting. But if you're starting to if you're lobbying to take people's healthcare away, you're not just like, it's not a difference of opinion. You're not just like, oh, I think you're wrong. Like, you're literally just hands down evil. Like, this is seriously dangerous. It's seriously ruining people's lives, and like, seriously fuck off. So yeah, so that's just about as emotional as I'm going to allow myself to get on this. But
I think that's
it's
entirely
real.
reasonable. I think that's
It's
entirely
not.
reasonable.
It's not. It's not just like academic. Like, it's serious. It's really serious.
Oh yeah.
Um,
No, I mean like I again like I I'm firmly of the belief that like at the end of the day like these people, if they don't actively want trans people to die, they don't care if that's like a natural consequence of their of their ideology, right? It's either that's the goal that they're seeking, or they don't care that that's a consequence of their ideas, right? Like if you're actually advocating for trans people to be in such a position where they can't access like very necessary medical assistance and medical care, or if that's like a consequence of your ideology or the ideas that you put forward, then either you are intending for trans people to to suffer the consequences of that, or you are not caring about like the fact that trans people might, might take their life or might otherwise find themselves in situations where it's very hard for them to be able to survive. It's yeah. I don't have much sympathy for people who are gender critical. I really don't. I applaud you for being able to do that, but my sympathies are very limited. Usually those are the kind of people I just lay in bass if I ever get into a conversation, or if I ever like debate them or whatever, because yeah, I don't know, the ideas are bad and I want the audience to recognize it.
for sure. I mean, I don't know if you want to like pivot into this, but like, I don't really know what I'm doing for lots of the time. I guess I'm inspired by people who talk to people who hate them and like win them over. I know there's one guy who is a black man in the USA who talks to Ku Klux Klan members and like has de-radicalized some of them, and I think that's quite inspiring, and it's like a noble
It
thing to
is a good
do.
thing yeah, no, like I'll say,
I
or
mean,
sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say it. Yeah, there's pros and cons for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
like, I'll say that, like, there is good work to be done there. Like, there is, and hey, if there's anyone who's going to be able to convince these people, it's probably us and similar people or similarly situated people, right? Like, I get that. But for me, there's kind of like two things here, right? There's like a strategy aspect, and there's also just like a personal, practical aspect. The strategy aspect is that, like, it is, while it's good to, like, I guess, de-radicalize people or to get people like divorced from these sorts of ideas, as far as like strategy goes, I'm more focused on trying to win over people who probably are not like I think that as a baseline, it's a lot easier to win over people who are not as invested in these ideas, and just show those people like why these ideas are bad, rather than try to convince people who have these ideas that they are wrong, right? Usually I'm trying to appeal more to like, the average reasonable person who's not like necessarily informed on these subject matters, rather than like people who have these beliefs, right? Because for me, it doesn't really change like the substance, but it does change like the rhetoric that I employ, right? It changes whether or not I'm like very tentative and very careful and very like, oh, la-di-da with the way that I address people. But like if there's people who I'm talking to who have these sorts of views and are just like married to them, then I'm not going to waste the time on them. It's like talking to a brick wall. And so if there's no way that I'm going to be able to convince them against their views, then to not mince words, yeah, I'm going to humiliate them in front of my audience, right? And hopefully be able to like show other people why they're wrong.
I'm such a sucker for this. Like, I always feel awkward about, like, I do a lot of humiliating for my audience kind of thing, but always like anonymously.
Sure.
And also I such a sucker for getting trapped into arguments. If someone comes up to me with an argument which has a logical contradiction in it, I like my brain gets locked into showing them it, and they'll be denying that the moon exists, and they'll be saying that the only
Oh yeah.
person that lives in the lizard is himself. And it doesn't matter. So I'm trying to wade through it. I'm just like showing them that there's this logical contradiction in their argument. And suddenly it's like 8 hours later. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm just addicted to it. I can't escape.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, I totally
guess
get that.
on the moderates thing, I guess that is where I've had the most, I don't really know how to say it, the most productive conversations, or the like gender critical people who I talk to a lot, like in DMs and stuff, are usually the like true TERFs, but who aren't extreme, as in they are actually feminists and they have a like bad. I mean, it's literally transphobia because it's just irrational prejudice that they have of trans people. Oh, you know, you're just trans because you like feminine stereotypes or something. I'm like, well, no, that's false. And maybe, hopefully, talking to me, you'll see that's the case. And because I know the rest of your feminist worldview makes sense, if you could understand that that premise is false, then, I mean, we basically agree on everything.
Yeah. No, and I get that. I guess this is where sort of. Or sorry, go ahead.
It's difficult.
Yeah, I guess like for me, this is where sort of the other aspect, like the personal aspect, comes in, right? Because like maybe there are like some TERFs who would send me messages or emails who are like, "Hey Riley, I just really want to have like a nice like, you know, I have these views that you're not actually who you say you are, and you're just a confused man who wants to wear dresses or what the fuck ever."
Human.
Yeah, I still think you're still human. Just talk to me. The fact of the matter is, I know that like most of those conversations will not like end in any way productive. I actually tried having a debate with someone who basically approached me in that sort of a way. Named, I think her name was Marcy, and I had a debate with her, and literally the entirety of it was I walked through like every single one of her arguments and how they were wrong or logically based or like illogically based. And at the end of it, she was like, "Huh, thanks. I still maintain my beliefs, but I'm glad we could be civil about it." And I'm like, I literally just talked to a wall for an hour. And then afterwards, she just like lived in the comment section of that video, responding to every single, even halfway negative comment about her until the point where I had to block her. I was like, okay, no, I'm not dealing with this. Like, though, like, I understand that there are those kind of people who present themselves like that. I'm just not going to deal, like, I'm not going to deal with it if it's like very apparent that they're actually otherwise not acting in good faith. And also just like, I am one person. And my mental health takes first and foremost, and I'm going to pick my battles where I think I'm going to be able to make the biggest difference. And like those kinds of people who it's like there might be some kind of an opportunity to be able to persuade them. I'm not going to invest in them if it's like if it seems like it's too much of an effort. Like I don't want to be like messaging with someone for 8 hours on Twitter until I get to the point where they literally, you know, don't budge on anything, even after it seems like they might have for like over the course of the 8 hours of Twitter DMs. Like, I'm not going to waste my time on them when I have so much other shit in my life that I could be otherwise doing to like further the causes I want to, you know?
I wish I was more of a strategy person. I've got a story about this. Do you mind?
Yeah, go for it.
So I went to like a nightclub with my friends Lucy and Christina, shout out, and like met some random guy and was talking to him. And like he with social media came up, and I like casually dropped that I got 1 trillion followers or whatever. And he was like, "Oh, why do so many people follow you?" And I was like, "I don't know if he knows I'm trans or not, so I don't want to mention LGBT stuff." But like I spent a lot of time arguing about feminism, so well, just feminism stuff. And he's like, "Feminism is evil" or something. And we had like such a good conversation up to then. I was like,
"Fuck,
why'd you say that?" So I like took him on, and then so he said something like, is like standard MRA talking points. He was like, feminism is about equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. And he was like, equality of opportunity is where everyone starts on the same ground and then they work hard and get there. You know, it's like the libertarian dream. And equality of outcome is doesn't matter how hard you work, you end up with the same results as that lazy guy down the street. You know, it's the standard like right wing. So I was like, well, but that isn't what feminism is. And he was like, well, but it's not equality of opportunity, is it? And so I like, it's a logical contradiction here. He's making a false dichotomy. So I was like, yeah, but what we have today isn't one of those things. So it has to be something else. There has to be at least 3 options, and he just wouldn't have it. And I got to the point where I was like, can we agree that 3 is bigger than 2? Like, is that something we can? Is that our starting point? Is that the point where we get to?" And he just wouldn't have it. And like, I was just about to like explain the number line, like seriously, because I'm an idiot. And my friend came over and she was like, "I think you need rescuing. We need to go home." And it's suddenly like 3 a.m. and I'd been arguing with this guy for like 3 hours, and I'd literally got to the point where I was having to argue three was bigger than two. Uh, I'm
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
I'm really bad.
no,
It
I
wasn't
totally
that
get
big,
it.
sorry.
Yeah, like no, listen, I'm fine having some of those kinds of arguments if it is on camera, and if I can make some good ass video content from it, right? But otherwise, yeah, no, like I'm not gonna waste my time having those kind of conversations because they're often unproductive and you aren't able to get anything meaningful out of it, right? But yeah, otherwise, like again, it is just strategy, right? Both from being able to like do the most with your time, but also, I mean, like I also care because like I work basically around the clock, right? Like I wake up in the morning during the weekday and I'm just kind of at my computer for the most part, unless I'm working out or eating. Otherwise, like doing something which necessitates me being away from the computer. I'm basically working from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. So my time is very important to me. And I'm not going to waste it fucking around with people in DMs, right? I'm just not. People have an issue, then they can email.
Because I absolutely waste my life in DMs.
Oh my god. See, I just cannot. That's why I do my emails, right? And I have people who want to come on and like have an issue with what I say, reach out to me that way. Because it's much easier to consolidate all that information down into like one or two syllable avenues for communication. But yeah, and then also just like practically speaking, it's just not. I don't know. I feel like I would lose my goddamn mind doing that all day. Like I feel like it's just not good for mental health. Even though I know that it's good for. I know that people do, and I know that it's perfectly fine and all that good stuff. It's just that like
It rots your brain.
it does rot your brain. Yeah. Yep. All right. I think that's basically I'm myself hitting the wall. So I think that's basically everything I want to talk about. Do you have any like concluding thoughts that you want to wrap up with? Anything else that you want to talk about? Any way that you want to conclude?
I guess just on the like healthcare thing, I'm not sure how soon the judges are going to announce the result of it. There's a whole range of possibilities. Like possibly this will backfire and it will set extra legal precedent that is fine. Possibly they'll, so there need to be extra regulation or something, which might not make much difference. Possibly. I mean, they could just block under 18s from trans healthcare, which is, I mean, that will literally be fatal. It'll be so bad.
Yeah.
And that's not even the worst outcome, because the worst outcome would be that, and then also weakening Gillick competence, which could affect abortion and contraception and whatever other medical treatments kids can have, which is like all of them. Like it really could be pretty fatal. Lots of my friends are quite confident about it, and they don't think it's going to go so bad. I'm a bit of a pessimist, so
yeah,
we'll see. Anyway, yeah, I guess that's my closing statement.
All right. Well, it's depressing, but thank you for coming on.
That's all right. Sorry for rambling a bit this time.
I mean, listen, it's very educational. I mean, like, obviously, it's, I'm of the opinion that spreading as much information about these sort of things is really what we need right now, especially for people who are primarily dealing with these issues or people who are, otherwise abroad, overseas, or in a different country. And, want to be able to see, like, what kind of situations other people are in, right? Because I think, like, I'm often thinking about, like, U.S. politics and how trans people are being treated in the U.S., but, like, obviously, like, it's not the only place where people are dealing with these kind of issues, right? And in fact, you see,
we're the world leading exporters of anti-trans bullshit.
Oh yeah, so no, you're over there on like TERF Island. Yeah, it's the main thing that you export. It's your number one export is fucking TERF propaganda and bullshit.
I think that's probably true at the moment.
Yeah. Why you be like this? Why you do this?
Man. Pretty grim.
All right. Well, hey, yeah, it is grim, but thank you so much for coming on. I thought it was super educational, and obviously every time that we've spoken, it's been wonderful, and I really appreciate you volunteering your time, for reaching out to me about this and for telling me about it and being willing to come on and explain what's up with everyone. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me, and thanks for listening to my nonsense. Thanks everyone in chat and stuff.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later, all right? All right. Aw. Bye.